The reason they get immunity is because they did something wrong. They didn't do anything wrong. They don't think in terms of immunity.
President Trump last year attacking Hillary Clinton's aides for receiving immunity in the investigation into her private email server. He is obviously singing a different tune now that his former national security advisor, retired General Michael Flynn, is apparently asking for immunity as well before he would testify to the FBI or before Congress on Russian meddling in the election. Trump calls the investigation a witch hunt. We have lots to talk about here with our panel. We have with us Republican Congressman Jason Lewis of Minnesota, Neera Tanden, President and CEO of the Center for American Progress, Nina Turner, former Democratic Ohio State Senator, and Mike Rogers, former Republican Chairman of the House Intelligence Committee. So, Congressman Lewis, let me just start with you. Immunity meant one thing last year, and it means something else this year. There's even obviously bites of Mike Flynn saying you don't ask for immunity unless you committed a crime.
Well, I think they're trying to get to the bottom of the story. If that helps, it helps. I'll tell you, if I were to go in front of a congressional panel, though, you don't have judicial oversight in a congressional testimony. And so telling somebody they ought to get immunity when you're going in front of Congress is probably the smart legal thing to do.
Your face says you're skeptical of that.
I'm sorry. I think the idea that Mike Flynn is asking for immunity tells us there's something deep and seriously wrong here. Obviously, last week we learned there was an FBI investigation. We have now 20 points of contacts between Russians and the Trump campaign and Trump associates.
Contact is not collusion, of course.
It's not collusion.
According to James Clapper, it's not collusion.
I would just say that I worked on plenty of presidential campaigns. I never, ever met with Russians, Russian assets, Russian government officials. There's a lot here, and Devin Nunes' behavior demonstrates that the House Intel Committee seems incapable of doing it. And so that's why I think lots of Democrats are asking for an independent commission. And I have to say, I do not understand why Republicans keep trying to block that.
Because there's 3 investigations going on here. There's the FBI, there's the Senate Intelligence Committee of the Richard Burr and John Warner, and there's the House Intelligence Committee. And the only thing we know is Flynn's contacts. James Clapper said there's no evidence of collusion whatsoever. Let's let the investigation.
James Clapper doesn't know that. He said that
the
before
former director of the
FBI
DNI on January 20th.
He said, as of the time he left the government, January 20th, he didn't know of it.
But the FBI has a current investigation.
That's right.
And
Let's go to let him do it.
An independent commission is a way for us publicly to see that.
You're the former chairman of the House Intelligence Committee, so let me ask you, what do you make of the request for immunity by General Flynn's lawyer?
Well, there's 2 sides of that story. One is, if you're going to testify before Congress, the way that the statute works for lying to an FBI agent, it's called a 101 violation, what was it, 1001 violation, you would want to make sure that if you said something there, even inadvertently, it might not jive with what you told the FBI. You don't want to get in that mess if you wanted to come out and testify.
Because that's how the FBI squeezes people.
That's how the FBI squeezes you. I would say, listen, if I were the committees, I wouldn't grant immunity. And the other thing I would stop doing is having all of this public attention to an investigation. If this is really an investigation, everybody needs to clam up, candidly, including the president. Stop talking about it. I mean, the most dangerous place in Washington, D.C. right now is between a congressman who has read a classified report and a microphone. That needs to stop. And it's both sides. I just heard Adam Schiff this morning saying, well, we can't talk about that. But, boy, people are guilty of something. He's supposed to be the person helping lead an investigation for a conclusion. You can't go into this thinking you have a conclusion.
He's saying because there's no evidence, we need more investigation.
I think they all need to stop talking.
I mean, there may be something there, Jake. It might not be. But the fact that General Flynn criticized Clinton aides, and saying that you're guilty if you ask for immunity, well, he just asked for immunity, so maybe he's guilty. But it's not just the Democrats that are asking for an independent investigator. Quinnipiac poll just recently showed that 2 out of 3 Americans believe that there should be an independent investigation. So
you Ohioans like to cite polling. Congressman Jordan.
Are you linking me and Congressman Jordan?
You both like polls. That's all I'm saying. You both like the poll numbers. Speaking of President Trump and tweeting, he just tweeted this morning, maybe he was watching State of the Union. The real story turns out to be surveillance and leaking. Find the leakers. And you heard Congressman Schiff say this is the whole point as President Trump is trying to change the subject from any possible collusion, focus on the leaking.
I think there's 3 pretty distinct issues here that they need to get to the bottom of. I do think that the leaking is serious. You cannot have FISA material, which is the most sensitive collection.
Foreign intelligence
surveillance. It's very sensitive. If there was cause to have this information broadly distributed and leaked, That's a crime. That's a separate investigation in my mind. The FBI should do that. That sounds like a criminal action.
Yeah,
but the other two, this is important. Then there's one on Russia. This is where the committees could stay out of the way. The fact that the Russians are engaged in information operations here and around the world with our allies is a serious matter. If they could help the public understand their intentions and their capabilities, this would go a long way in the public. So you have those three different issues that are really important, really. And this the whole thing, I mean, this is when you want your government to be a lot more like James Bond than you do Austin Powers. Yeah. The problem here is it looks like the last.
Speaking of Austin Powers, Devin Nunes has actually been part of the problem, which is, I mean, what you're saying is that we shouldn't have this public discussion, and he's been out in front of reporters, and it turns out that he misled a lot of reporters over the last several weeks. And that's another reason why people think Republicans, the House Intelligence Committee, should not be holding this.
You like the whistleblowers when they say Trump did this or that with the Russians, but a whistleblower came to the chairman and said, look, we've had information that incidental collection has captured U.S. citizens.
The whistleblower
what was he supposed to do?
He went to the White House.
He went to the White House and got the information
from
the White House staffers.
Which is routine when you go to classified information. That's where you get it on
Okay, are you calling
grounds.
the White House staff who were hired by the president whistleblowers? Is that what you're saying?
I'm saying Nunes got information that, and it's now proven with a former Obama aide who said we had to collect the intelligence before Trump get in there.
No, you're dead. That's false.
What intelligence?
What you're saying does not make it. If you're referencing Elizabeth Farkas, that's not what she said. And actually,
I'll tell you what she said. No, I'll tell you what she said.
Devin Nunes went to the White House, got information from 3 staffers. And that's what he claimed was his information.
And
those 3 staffers, I don't know why they couldn't brief the president directly himself.
And where did we get the information on Russian collusion?
The FBI is investigating the Russian collusion right now.
How did it make it to the public sphere? Where did that information come from?
The House Intelligence Committee had Comey testify.
Here's a question for you, Neera. So,
no, you're wrong.
No, Comey was testifying.
So I think one of the points, and again, that's not to say that we should change the subject and stop focusing at all on possible Russian collusion, but let me ask this. If there was surveillance of the Russian ambassador, Kislyak, and that did pick up this conversation with General Flynn, in which he was supposedly talking about sanctions or something. And then that was spread throughout the government. His name was unmasked, meaning that it was still within confidential government information, but it was unmasked. It said General Flynn instead of Citizen A. And then the Washington Post broke that story, in which I think was attributed to 8 or 9 government sources, saying that Flynn had this conversation. It was a big blockbuster. That would be potentially a crime.
Yes, so here's what I think.
The leaking of his name.
I think the reason that happened is because Mike Flynn lied, right? So the question is, when Mike Flynn and the vice president lied to the American people about what Mike Flynn did, is it whistleblowing? Is it leaking? It may be both. So I'm perfectly comfortable getting to the bottom of that, as long as Republicans are perfectly comfortable to have a process that people have faith in. And I have to say, people do not have faith in Devin Nunes after the debacle of the last 2 weeks.
Would you have done anything differently as House Intelligence Chairman? You were obviously chairman of the committee. You had sources who were whistleblowers. You disagreed with your Democratic counterpart. Would you have handled it differently than the way Congressman Nunes did?
Completely, candidly. First of all, I was in a highly charged political investigation.
Sure, Benghazi.
Benghazi. Yeah. And we did a lot of other really good investigations as well. So we came to some common ground rules on how to do this investigation that was going to be facts and facts-based only for our lane, which was only intelligence. People wanted us to get into the State Department, wasn't our gig. They wanted us to get into DOD, wasn't our gig. So we came up with our ground rules to do our investigation into the intelligence piece of that. The point of that was we didn't have press conferences about it. We didn't run out every time we got a new document and say this happened or that happened. And my ranking member never went out in the press and said we should find these conclusions in the investigation, just like I never went out and said we should find these conclusions in the investigations. I think it's when the government does an investigation of any sort, it's serious. You're talking about people's character, maybe their freedom, right? They could go to jail. You need to take that as serious as it is. It is no place for sharp-edged partisan politics.
Nina,
because people's reputations are at risk.
Are you concerned at all that Democrats, liberals, progressives are expecting this investigation to go someplace that ultimately it might not? That ultimately it might turn up oh, this aide did something and he gets some small fine, and that's really all that the FBI and the intelligence committees can find?
Well, the congressman should recuse himself at this
Nunes.
point. That's Nunes. He should recuse himself so we can bring back some integrity to this investigation. And to your question, there might be something there, they might not. I hope that Democrats, liberals, and/or progressives are not putting all of their faith in the fact that something might be there. It might not, but that's why we need an investigation and we need an independent investigation.
And the ranking member should quit going on television and saying we don't have any evidence, therefore this is what the president did.
Well,
he just said that half an hour ago.
At the beginning of an investigation.
I mean,
obviously, people have been saying there's nothing here. Then we find out the FBI has a current counterintelligence investigation
This is
going
part
on.
of the problem, though, Jake. I mean, Jesus Christ, can we focus in on anything other than Russia? American people need some other stuff.
I'm glad you said that. Let me bring in Ivanka Trump. That's not what you meant. Ivanka Trump is officially a White House employee this week. Take a listen to her dad talking about her new role.
The Chancellor of Germany is going to has asked Ivanka to go to Germany, and she'll be working on similar issues with Chancellor Merkel.
What do you think?
I mean, what's next? A wealthy young president hiring his 35-year-old brother with no legal experience as Attorney General? I mean, what's it coming to?
The Kennedys.
This is much ado about nothing. I mean, they're following the ethics rules. They're taking no salary. That's fine.
I think it's interesting that we have a situation in which Ivanka Trump has holdings, including into the Trump Hotel. Jared Kushner has $700 million worth of holdings. The traditional thing to do here is to actually divest.
Right. I think Kushner has divested a lot, I think, according to the documents released on Friday. Ivanka has not. She has not divested at all. He has not divested from a lot of assets, including buildings. You saw that he's not divested from a company that has tried to do business with the Chinese. Yeah.
The president is meeting with this week. Who the president is meeting with this week. I think the issue here is it's odd to say you're going to have a campaign that drains the swamp when the president refuses to take the lines himself and his family refuses to take those lines.
I think we need an independent investigation there.
Thanks, one and all.